Hey, it's Elisa, and I'm so excited to have you here today. We're going to do a little bit of kind of fun learning. At least I think it's fun because it's about Ayurveda. It's one of my favorite topics. And I'm going to keep it shorter than a normal live stream. So sometimes I have info sessions that are about an hour long. So hopefully this will go a little shorter, but I just wanted to give you some of my favorite details about Ayurveda. And to do that, I am going to share my screen. So let me pull up my screen really quickly so we can look at the same thing together. Oh, let's get rid of that over there. And let's make this pretty. All right. Somehow we jumped ahead. So today we're talking about your body type, and specifically, what does your body type have to do with it? So what is it? Anything. So really your body type, which in Ayurveda we call your dosha or your constitution, has a lot to do with many of the things in your life that you just kind of think are preferences or the way you are, for lack of a better expression. But really, we're also very different. And the funny thing is, we tend to think that everybody else is just like us. But in reality, we have our unique body makeup, like how, not just how your body looks, but how your body reacts to different things, how you digest, how you sleep, different things that you like, so whether it's preferences of foods or activities, time of day, or even things like, if you like cold weather or hot weather. All of these things come down to your body type or your constitution. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit in this. That way we can move along. So I will come back to this one. So today you're going to learn a basic introduction to Ayurveda. So Ayurveda, again, one of my favorite topics, it's a sister science to yoga. And I like to liken Ayurveda to a way of finding balance. So that's why I have this picture here. It's all about creating balance. So we don't want to do too much of, any one thing, whether it's eating the same food, like just constantly. And, like if you only ever ate broccoli, even though broccoli is fantastic for you, you'd be missing out on a lot of other good things. And the same thing goes with activities. If you're a workout junkie and you never allow yourself to rest, you're not going to get that balance either. So it's really about creating balance. And what we look at are the 5 elements, the 3 doshas, and those make up your unique body type. As I mentioned, you are a unique, wonderful snowflake. You're your own special snowflake. And no one else is like you. Even if you have an identical twin, they are still different from you. There are still things that they probably like to do different than you do. And understanding your constitution or your dosha can help you make choices that support more significant health and happiness. And then also a really cool thing is, once you learn some of these things about yourself, you might be able to recognize them in other people, specifically maybe your loved ones, your kids, your spouse. And that might help you in your relationships with them when you can understand them a little better. All right, so a little bit about me, just in case you're new to me. My name again is Elisa Alexander, and I like to say that I help people age better. I help them discover the habits of thrive, which are, habits. When I say the habits of thrive, these are habits that allow you to thrive. They're sustainable habits that help you feel more vibrant and radiant as you get older. And really, I want to help you stop settling for, aches and pains, or just, wherever you are in your body, because sometimes we think, this is as good as it's going to get. It's all downhill from here. So stop settling for that and, start having the opportunity to feel more amazing than you ever thought was possible. As you can tell here from some of the pictures on screen, I am an avid runner. I'm a marathoner. I've run over 30 marathons, and that started when I was about 40. And actually, I think I just started running when I was 40, but in about 8 years' time, I ran over 30 marathons, taken a couple years off due to COVID with a bunch of races being canceled. And I'm really looking forward to getting back into some marathons again this year. I'm a yoga teacher, a yogi myself. I love doing yoga on the beach. As you can tell, this is one of my favorite places in the world in South Carolina with my husband and our dog Sadie. But I'm a running coach, a yoga teacher, I've been a personal trainer for over 20 years. It's, getting closer to 30 years now, the way time adds up. So about 25 years. And I just love, everything about wellness, helping you to be your best. And when I say helping you be your best, I do often use this quote in a lot of things. You'll find this on my website, and I share this a lot. And I think, I really believe this to my core. The best investment you can make is in yourself. So if you're not investing in yourself, and by that, I mean who you are tomorrow. So whether that's education or your health, you find that, you're going to be lacking in some of those areas. And maybe you're not going to get the goals that you want to achieve. So a lot of times, we might think, oh, I need to spend my money elsewhere. I need to spend my time elsewhere. Like I have too much stuff going on. But if you don't take the time to invest in yourself, you might get to a point where you have no choice but to, slam on the brakes on everything else. And now you've got something else to deal with. So just a little food for thought there. All right. So what is Ayurveda? Ayurveda, as I mentioned before, is the science of life. And it basically translates into sacred knowledge or the study of life. And as I mentioned, it can help you sync up your truest inner nature to get that balance. It's really a holistic tradition and a way of living that can help you claim and celebrate your capacity for wellness. It can help you discover challenge areas. So sometimes we may not realize that we're, basically kind of setting ourselves up for some of the things that we're dealing with. So maybe some of the actions you took in the last days, weeks might have to do with why you're feeling the way you're doing today. And the same thing goes for the future. So if you want to have control over how you're going to feel tomorrow and the next day, it's really important to think about the things that you're doing today. Now, I mentioned when we first started that in Ayurveda, we look at 5 elements. And the elements are ether, air, fire, water, and earth. And they are in absolutely everything on the planet. They're in your body. They're in every cell of your body. And we classify things, you'll see in a few moments, based on the qualities. So these elements have qualities and can show up in your body and in other things and in nature, weather, things like that, based on the qualities that we see. And here are the qualities that I mentioned. There are 10 pairs of opposites. So you can see them here. I mean, they're really common sense. Things like heavy and light, slow or dull, sharp and penetrating, cold and hot. So cold and hot, we really know that one. And I mentioned before, you might have a preference on whether you like cold or hot weather. And that can have to do with your constitution. Oily and dry, smooth and rough, dense and liquid, soft and hard, stable and mobile, gross and subtle. Now, we use these pairs of opposites, these qualities, to really help us determine a whole lot of things. So when it comes to, like, for instance, if I were working with you and you said to me, Elisa, I have a terrible headache. Well, I know what a headache is, but I don't know what the headache feels like to you. So I might ask you to describe it. And you might say, oh, it's a sharp headache, or it's, it's a dull headache. And by having some idea of these qualities, whether it's a headache or something else that you're experiencing, we can then figure out some ways to create the balance or to, deal with what, the experience that you're having by looking at the opposite. So that's why we, have these opposites here. Now, I mentioned there are 5 elements and 3 doshas. The 3 doshas are Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. And those 3 doshas are made up of the 5 elements. So we'll look at them in a little more depth in a moment or two. But for instance, Vata is air and ether, Pitta is fire and water, and Kapha is earth and water. And just like those qualities that I mentioned before, just like they're in the dosha, or they have to do with the elements, they make up the doshas as well, or they characterize the doshas. So for instance, Vata has qualities of dry, light, cold, rough, subtle, mobile, and clear. Pitta has qualities of hot and sharp, light, liquid, spreading, and oily. And then Kapha has a whole bunch. So I mentioned Kapha is earth and water, which is really dense energy. And Vata was air and ether. So Vata has, fewer qualitative things than Kapha. So Kapha, because of the density, has a lot more qualities that you might see here. So things like heavy and slow, cool and oily, smooth, dense, so that density, soft, stable, gross, and cloudy. You might think sticky. And you don't really have to know these three. So you don't have to memorize these. You don't have to know, like if you take a dosha quiz, and I'm going to share my dosha quiz with you later. You don't have to know which one of these you are or memorize the list. It's really, again, thinking about the quality. So if you're experiencing something in your life or your day, like maybe you wake up and you just like, you feel kind of foggy. So that might be like that cloudy. So you might have a little bit of extra kapha in your day. And even one thing to back up that I wanted to share with you. So when you are born, when you have that magical moment of birth, you have your constitution set for life. So that's called your prakriti. Now what happens is day to day, moment to moment, or however often, you might find yourself getting a little out of balance, or we might say imbalanced. Or maybe a dosha is aggravated. So you might hear that, like your dosha is aggravated, or different terminology like that. So if you hear that you have an imbalance or you're out of balance in one of these three doshas, and it could be one, it could be two, or it could be all three, that doesn't really necessarily have to do with your main dosha or your constitution of how you are, because you're made up of all three doshas. You have all three doshas in every cell of your body. And then when you take a dosha quiz, like for instance, I mentioned the one that I have that I'm going to share with you then, it might tell you you're primarily Vata, or you're primarily Pitta, or primarily Kapha. Usually you have one that you are the most of. And then there might be another one that is still pretty high. And then maybe the third one you're lower on. There are very few people who are pretty equal across the board of all three doshas. And there's really no one right way to be. So it's not like you can win your dosha. It's not like Vata's better or Pitta's better or Kapha. They all have importance, and you need them all in your body and in your life. And then it's about creating balance. Because if you have too much of any one of them, you can experience different symptoms, and they can show up in your body. They can show up in your mood and the way that you act, the way you interact with people. And a lot of times when we have too much of one, then we have to look at, okay, we need to decrease that one. It's not necessarily building the others up. It's really like creating that balance of, okay, so if I have too much of, for instance here, too much dry and light, well, what's the opposite of dry and light? So that would be liquid, heavy. So then we might need to balance those out with, opposite qualities. So I hope that makes sense. If not, feel free to pop a question in. And if I don't see it, I'll get back to you. I promise I will. So let's go right here. So Vata is the energy of air and ether. And I mentioned that before. And because of that, it's also because air and ether are light and movable, it is the energy of movement and impulse, creativity and connection. So in your body, you can see Vata with breathing, the pulsation of your heart. Any movement in your body is a representation of Vata. So like your heart beating, muscle movement in general. So me moving my hands when I talk, that is Vata. Sensory perception, nerve impulses, communication, and our capacity to experience flexibility, joy, and expansive consciousness. So there are a lot of really good, important things about Vata. If you have too much Vata, that can lead to fidgeting. So if you have a fidgety child, or you catch yourself fidgeting at work, you can't sit still, you have racing thoughts, you're feeling anxious or fearful, you have trouble falling asleep, all of those can be signs of excess Vata. And moving on, Pitta. Pitta is the energy of fire and water. So we like to think about it as digestion and transformation. In the body, it shows up as appetite, digestion, absorption, assimilation, intelligence, charisma, courage, and ambition. So again, here are the qualities we looked at on the other page. And if you have too much Pitta, it can cause irritability and frustration. You might have an insatiable appetite. So when you hear people who say that they're hangry or they have to eat certain amounts of time, they might have too much pitta. And what happens when you have an excess of pitta, sometimes you eat and your food just goes right through you and you really don't have an opportunity to absorb it. And that might be why you're just constantly hungry. So then we need to balance that, because that's not a great way to be. We want to be able to absorb and assimilate all the wonderful nutrients that we're eating that are going to be or are meant to become us. Another sign of excess pitta is excess heat in the body. So for anyone experiencing hot flashes, this could be a sign that you have too much pitta. And then again, we need to balance those qualities. So if you're eating, this is a really, if you think about it, a common sense one, but for a lot of people, it doesn't, until you hear it, it doesn't stand out, which is spicy food. If you're eating a lot of spicy, pungent food, and that includes things like onions, garlic, it can be different spices like ginger or cinnamon. Those can actually increase pitta and can cause things like hot flashes. Now, one really important thing before I move on, and since I'm talking about food, is that we need to have what we consider and we call the sixth taste. And one of the six tastes is that pungent taste. So we do need to have, different spices in our foods. But again, we want to have that balance, because if you're somebody who, just slathers on hot sauce on everything, you might notice that you sometimes get irritable. You might notice that you have inflammation in your body or, rashes, things like that. Or maybe you're hangry a lot of the time, or maybe you're dealing with hot flashes, or, it's the middle of winter and everybody else is bundled up and you're walking around in shorts and you're still hot. So that might be a sign that there's too much pitta going on. All right, Kapha. Kapha is the energy, again, of water and earth. So because it's those dense energies, it's also considered the energy of structure and cohesiveness. So you think about water, it has cohesiveness, and earth is really solid. It's grounding, it's stable. In your body, we think of it as nourishment, growth. So the time of life that is associated with Kapha is childhood, because that's when kids are growing at a very big rate. So if you think about your life, you did your biggest growth when you were a child. Chances are, as you got into your 20s or on, you really didn't grow as much or change as much, because the child's body is growing and changing all the time. It's also seen, Kapha is also seen as lubrication. So lubrication in your joints, regeneration, fluid balance, fat regulation, strength and stamina. So Kapha is associated with endurance. It's also associated with memory and the ability to feel contentment and compassion. So a lot of people who have a lot of Kapha in their constitution, that they're the huggers, or again, you have all three in you. So you might have like maybe signs of some of the others, but then you're a hugger. And that's, I have the hugger family kind of thing in me, or it's in my family. Excess Kapha can show up as lack of motivation. So like when you just want to stay on the couch and not do anything. Oversleeping, feeling sad or apathetic. Now it's okay to feel sad when, things happen, but if you if that just stays in your, mentality where, you just can't seem to get out of a funk, you feel really down and you're dealing with grief that just doesn't want to let go, that can be a sign of excess Kapha. And then we'd want to look at how we can balance that. Other signs of stagnation in the body are, signs of excess Kapha. Like, again, it's heavy earth element. So if you find yourself just wanting to stay like on the ground, on your sofa, you don't want to get up and move, that can be a sign of too much Kapha. Now, with the three doshas, I kind of mentioned a little bit about Kapha with the morning, so about oversleeping. But what I wanted to do is share with you this Dosha clock. This is one of my favorite things. I use it in coaching a lot because it can really help us find the right times to, have our meals. Like, when should you have your meals? When should you have your biggest meal? When should you move your body? When should you get your rest? All of these things have optimal times for, optimal health for you. Now, the three doshas I mentioned, they show up in your body. They show up in time of life, because I mentioned Kapha is childhood. They show up in time of day, time of year, and, in so many different things. And the more you get familiar with these, the more you can see them happening. And, even if it's a certain time of year, there can be crossover because, this is just the way life is. But basically, Kapha right here, that will start down on the left-hand side. And it's this blue piece of pie or the blue piece of the clock. Again, energies of water and earth. And in the body, we equate that to mucus. It's cloudy, fluid, dense. And you can see that energy, this arrow, is coming down. This is body mode. So when we start our day, we really want to wake up before this happens, because if we wake up past 6 a.m. or past sunrise, you might feel a little foggy, so that density might be there. So we might, just feel a little sluggish just because we woke up after 6 a.m. Then we go to 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So now we're in the energy of Pitta, that fire and water. So that I mentioned on the other screen that fire and or Pitta is the energy of digestion. And so our digestion is strongest middle of the day, this 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. when we're in Pitta time. So you want to take advantage of this. So you can see the arrows going up. And that basically means, this is when we are in our digestive mode. See, we're in digestion mode here. So we want to take advantage of this digestive time, or this time when the sun is at its highest, to really take advantage of that digestion to have our biggest meal. I'm just going to mute for 1 second. So one thing I didn't mention before is, with the doshas, with Ayurveda, we're really trying to get in sync with nature, get our bodies working with nature, working with our bodies instead of working against them, because our bodies are part of nature. Even though we live in homes, we drive cars, we have electric lights, we have all these luxuries, we have heat in our houses, our bodies have not evolved past the point of, where they were, 100 or so years ago, when we didn't have all these luxuries, when we were only able to be, doing most of our movements when the sun was out, when the sun was there. So otherwise you had candles or other things like that. And we, have since, gotten to the point where we stay up and we're watching Netflix or YouTube at all hours. We're, on our computers, we're, scrolling our phones, and our bodies are not used to those things. Our bodies, haven't adapted to those things. So what we're doing is we're fighting our bodies. We're, eating out of alignment with the sun, eating out of alignment with what our bodies are actually in tuned with or attuned to. And so we want to get, to get optimal health, to really digest our food well, to nourish our bodies, to prevent disease or reverse disease if we're dealing with them. We have to get our bodies back into sync with nature. And that's why we look at this clock. So again, Pitta, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., that is the best time to have your biggest meal. So it's kind of flipping the script from having your biggest meal in the evening. So down here somewhere, most people eat, or not most, a lot of people eat down here when they get home from school or work, or, the family's home, and maybe after practices and things like that, if kids have activities. So we want to, really do some thinking about, how can I eat my biggest meal up here? And that means, good, high quality fats, carbs, and proteins. If you want to have dessert, have it up here with the meal so that your body's doing all the digesting at once. When we get over here from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. or around sunset, that's Vata time. And again, you can see it's got the air and ether, it's the wind, the arrows are going in all different directions. And that means, if you haven't had a really good lunch, you might notice that your attention is scattered. It's all over the place. And maybe you feel like you need, caffeine or sugar to make it through the afternoon. But if you've had a good lunch and it's, really sustainable or sustained you and nourishing, you might find that this is a very creative time from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. and that you can do some really good work during this time if you've had that good lunch. And then, we come back down here overnight, it's the same thing, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Got that heavy energy. This is a good time where, hopefully we've had a small supper, maybe before 6 p.m. if we can. And then this is a good time to, interact with your family, maybe do something fun together, do some light housework. You don't want to be doing anything big and strenuous. Because ideally you'll have your last meal at least 3 hours before bed, and then hopefully in bed by 10 p.m. Now, if you're like me, I always grew up, or when I grew up, my dad would stay up and watch the 11 o'clock news. I would sometimes stay up till then, or I'd stay up even later if it was summertime and I was waiting for my mom to get home from work. But a lot of people, are, catching up on email or doing different projects. And the thing is, you might be in here like around 9 o'clock and you're starting to get a little tired. And if you stay up past 10 o'clock, this thing, because we go into Pitta time, and you might notice it, all of a sudden you've got this second wind, you've got all this energy. And now you're like, okay, so now I'm going to bang out these emails, I'm going to work on that project. And, you're missing out then on Pitta time again, which overnight is when your body goes into repair mode. So there's a saying in Ayurveda that sleep before midnight is, counts for double. So if you can, the ideal is really to be asleep around 10, before 10. But again, after 10, sometimes you get into that second wind, and now you're, kind of fighting yourself and missing out. You're taking energy from tomorrow, because now your body's not going to be able to get the repair that it needs. I'm just going to pause one more time. So then really what I help people with a lot is building your daily routine or their daily routines. In Ayurveda, there's a word called dinacharya, and it basically translates to daily routine. And by doing some of these things that you can see here, maybe meditating, having an exercise routine, and I always recommend that you change up your exercise or your workout program so it's not the same every single day. Even if you're a runner, so I'm a runner, there are days that I run, but some days I run longer, some days I run shorter, some days I don't run at all. I might do strength training, or I might do yoga. So it's mixing it up to keep your body guessing, and then you can, vary the times of day. There are other things, that you can have in your daily routine, like brushing and flossing. One thing that we also do in Ayurveda is scrape our tongues, which is a great way to, one, you look at your tongue and get an idea of what's going on in your body. And then two, you're also helping remove excess toxins that it's basically stuff that your body wasn't able to digest. So that's, one of the main reasons we scrape our tongues. But you can see there are simple things that you can do. And I always recommend, if you're creating a daily routine or you're trying to make a change in your life, to start small. Ask yourself, what's the one small thing that I can do? Like if you see on this picture, there's so many things going on, and trying to do all of them at once or start them all at once is a way to set yourself up for failure rather than setting yourself up for success. We really want to set ourselves up for that success. We want to honor the intuition of our bodies. I'm just going to jump through a few of these because I want to keep this as short as possible. One thing I'm gonna touch on this one: avoid snacking or overeating, because this one was a hard one for me. And because I grew up snacking, and I also grew up with as I became a runner, listening to different people talk about how you fuel your body, and the idea that, oh, you need to eat every couple hours, or you need to, like, all these different experts saying, this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do, or, oh, you never want your blood sugar to dip. But the thing is, if you're constantly snacking, you never allow your body to go into fat metabolism, and you're also overtaxing your digestion. So you want to allow your digestive system to get a rest, just like you need a rest as well. And in Ayurveda, we talk about meal spacing, which is often referred to by other people as intermittent fasting, and you'll hear me talk about both. But sometimes when you hear the word fasting, you think of depriving yourself or starving, but really intermittent fasting is about spacing your meals so that your digestive system can properly do what it needs to do, get the rest, and that you can maximize your digestion and maximize fat metabolism as well. And this is probably the biggest tip that I give absolutely everybody, is to drink warm water between meals. You can add a slice of lemon, you can add a slice of lime if you like. If you're not a fan of those, you can leave it out. And again, this was a very hard one for me also, because as a little girl, my dad always made us drink tap water, which I thought was horrible. And so when I could, I would always put a lot of ice in my water. And I got to the point where I was, I'd get a glass of water and I would first fill the glass with as much ice as possible, then put the water in. And unfortunately, when you do that, you're dampening your digestion. And as you can see, a lot of this goes back to your digestion. And really, digestion is one of the cornerstones to health, because how you digest and metabolize your food, that has an impact with everything else. So if you're not digesting your food well, that's going to have an impact. When you drink warm water, it doesn't, do that thing where it basically puts your digestive fire out. Now, some people like lemon or lime in their water. I do normally put lemon in my water. If you're not a fan of warm water or hot water, what I recommend that you do, again, just like with everything else, start small. So you could I start my day with a cup of like tea, warm water with lemon. And before that, I would always start my day with a cup of coffee. And it took me a long time to shift this habit. But when I wanted to, or when I decided to make the change here, I would pour myself both a cup of hot water and a cup of coffee. And I would take a sip of the water and then a sip of my coffee and a sip of my water and then a sip of the coffee. And then gradually I got to the point where I was starting my day just with the water without the coffee completely. And again, that's the way that you can introduce the habit. You don't have to go from drinking like, a gallon of coffee a day to, okay, all I drink now is warm water. But drinking warm water between your meals has so many benefits. And one of the biggest ones is that it's going to help you with the snacking, which is the one we looked at on the last slide. So if you're snacking a lot, oftentimes it has to do with the fact that you might be thirstier than you think. You might not be hydrated. So by having some warm water, or maybe a sip or two every 20 minutes, that's going to help curb the cravings. So if that's something you're dealing with where you feel constantly hungry, and I know we talked about that on, with Pitta, having an excess of Pitta, but sometimes it's more psychological where we're used to eating, so we think we're hungry, or we're thirsty, and so therefore we don't recognize that we're hungry as well, because a lot of times those two feelings get confused, where we think we're hungry, but really we need something to drink. So I definitely recommend the water between meals. If you're hungry and it's been less than a couple hours since you've eaten, have a cup of warm water first and then see if you're still hungry, because chances are it might just be that you're thirsty. So this one, of course, I always recommend to everybody, relax and slow down. We all need some time. We need some daily exercise and yoga. And I mentioned that on the Dinacharya slide. And of course, a little bit of meditation and pranayama. So pranayama is basically breathing techniques. And I am a big fan of that. And there's so many different breathing techniques that you can do. And the one that I share is the easiest thing that you can do is just take 3 breaths. Or you can set a timer on your phone for 1 minute and just pause, notice your breathing, your natural breathing. And you can close your eyes if that feels good. If you're at work, you might want to go to the ladies' room and just sit there for a minute or two and just pause and be. And so even though we like to think of meditation as being certain things, sometimes it's just giving yourself a moment, 2 moments, 3 breaths, whatever it is, pause and just be. So I wanted to share with you just some ways that you can get in touch with me. My website is alisaexander.com. And my email address is info@alisaexander.com. So pretty easy. And if you want to get that dosha quiz that I mentioned, all that you have to do is go to my DM, send me a DM on Facebook, or you can contact me either one of these ways, and I will send you the dosha quiz. Now, the dosha quiz is really kind of cool because it's super quick. It only takes about 2 minutes. There are longer dosha quizzes, but this one is just designed to find out the basics of your dosha, your primary dosha of your constitution. And then what will happen is you'll get a few helpful tips that you can use right away. So I know we shared a lot of information today, And hopefully you were able to, pick out maybe one or two things that you'd like to try down the road. But if you want to get that dosha quiz and, get a little more insight into your body type. So I know we talked about a lot of things here today, but getting an idea about, your unique snowflake that you are, or snowflake that you are. Maybe you're a snowflower or a sunflower. And get an idea like what is my dosha, what is my primary dosha, and what are some of the things that maybe I'm doing that are taking me out of balance, and what are some of the things that I can do to bring me into balance. So I hope this helped, and I really enjoyed spending the time with you today. And again, if you have any questions, please reach out, and I will be talking to you soon. Namaste, and have a wonderful day.